Hi, I'm Whack.
Hey, and I'm Pat. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Weekly Orbit this week, ending Friday, October 4th. Whack, how's October going for you so far?
October is Crashtober, more like it. It's been a bad
Oh,
start to the month so far. So, yeah, that's just the way it goes, I guess.
yeah. We had a good week last week, and then it looks like we've retraced. We're looking at the Ethereum chart right now. We're at 2,350. On the week, we're down 10 over almost 11%.
Mm-hmm.
RPL's faring just as bad.
Worse.
We're down about 15% on the week, down to $9.61. I
Yeah.
saw some people in Discord had their limit orders filled though, just full $10, right?
Yep, that's right. Like, it's a nice time to buy, I think. Like, the idea, of course, being that at RPL under $10, like it's a good entry over the long term. I think that will be the case. But I'm still waiting to see if we go lower. I'm not expecting it to go lower necessarily, but if it does go lower, that's where I'll be making my buys. I'm not quite there yet. I was thinking in trading yesterday that if like summer 2022 low was around $7.50, and the ratio, of course, we're way below that already. So I'm not even looking at that, but it looks like sometimes crypto kind of likes doing this, like retesting the lows kind of thing. So if we get to those numbers again, then I think I'll be buying around that area, whatever the ETH ratio might be. I was kind of like crunching some numbers yesterday, and I think that the ETH ratio might go down. Sorry, the ETH price might go down to around 2,100, which is another 10% lower from here. RPL goes down, a little bit more than that, and then we lose some ground on the ratio. So maybe somewhere around 0.0035. Of course, I'm totally pulling these numbers out of the air, so don't trust me. This is not financial advice, like not trading advice, any of that stuff. That's just how I'm kind of seeing things for myself. However, you all are all welcome to make whatever buying or selling decisions you want.
Yeah, I assume it's the potential war in the Middle East that is getting markets all worried. Is that what caused the overnight?
The strike on the longshoremen, like the dock workers, they
Hmm.
are going on strike. I think their strike started today. If I haven't caught up with the news yet this morning, but it looks like their strike is either imminent start or very close to starting, and that I think will have a big impact on goods coming into the US, and then of course the downstream effects from that, because so many of our goods come in by shipping, and everything that's due to come in via shipping will potentially be delayed for days, weeks, months, who knows how long. There's a lot of public negotiations happening with the representatives from the union and the services, and so far the Biden administration said that we're not getting involved. It's up to you guys to sort it out. So I think it'll get resolved quickly. They're a very strong union. They have a lot of power. And out of the Middle East, we're already getting word from Iran that we don't want to escalate anymore. And this was like hopefully the end of it, but I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work out either. So yeah, it's kind
Yeah,
of open-ended, and the markets, of course, really dislike uncertainty. Once the issues are resolved, then there's the election, which will be bringing uncertainty. Right now, it's a coin flip. So there's a chance that, we won't get a resolution to these uncertainties until a month from now, potentially. And then, we've got another rate cut and all
but
of those things
it's
together.
October. This is October. 80% of
Yeah,
the time it goes up. 80% of the
yeah,
time it works every time. Come
yeah. The
on.
mark, the markets don't give a f
What do you
about that.
mean? I don't like to opine on things I'm not really knowledgeable about. But in terms of that union strike, it just seems that we're whistling past the graveyard. I mean, eventually that's all going to be automated, right? I just see these giant containers being moved into trucks, and like it's just, I think they're probably doing a lot of automation already in different ports around the world. And I just think
Yep.
that's something that eventually computers and machines can do as good or better than humans, just
Hmm.
because you're just moving giant containers around. I could be wrong, but it just seems like that's one of the things that automation could, 10 years
So
from now, it's
one
going to be
of the
different.
yeah, one of the conditions of the strike is that there isn't a push towards automation. They're kind of fighting back against it, right? So
Yeah.
how long they can hold that tide, I don't know how long they can hold it for, because eventually the cost benefit analysis can shift completely, such that hey, the automation will just make sense. So I think that is a losing
Yeah.
battle in the long term,
Yeah.
but in the short term, they've got a lot of control over like the US economy and like everything basically.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at we had ETH flows into the ETFs yesterday, actually pretty decent, even though the price was down about $20 million. But the day before, we had an outflow of 49 million.
Hmm.
A big chunk of that came from Fidelity. That was, I think, their first major withdrawal. We had a couple good days last week, and then we've kind of receded a little bit. Overall, we're down about 550 million from the launch of the ETFs. So we still got some ways to go. I expect at some point we're gonna to cancel that negative 500 million out, and we're gonna be in positive at some point in the future, but just
Yeah.
not today.
Not yet. No, that's actually been a huge disappointment with those like lack of flows into the ETH ETF. The grayscale one is just too strong. Like their outflows are too strong. If you scroll down a little bit though, you can see that at this point we're actually slowing down against the BTC outflows. Yeah, keep going a little bit more. Yeah, that's the chart there. So look, we've actually crossed over the BTC line now. So it looks like people are starting to hold their ETH ETFs in grayscale a little bit more firmly now than there were during with grayscale. So that's very interesting to see that, but that just shows you that there's a lot of ways to go yet still for outflows. If we do reach that 40% number, which the
Yeah.
BTC one has reached, it can be scary. We just need those inflows to come in, and we just not had those to the level that you want, except days here or there. But overall, we're off the lows. I think the lows were like 650 million, so we're 100 million up from that, but it's still not amazing.
Yep. We'll get there. Be interesting
Yeah.
to see what happens towards the end of this 2024 as people make decisions about tax, loss harvesting, and they start thinking taxes around the end of the year, and
Yeah.
how that affects the withdrawals from Grayscale, or maybe it doesn't. I don't know, but that's something on the calendar to watch. Let's take a look at some Rocket Pool news. So Wacky had a really great Reddit post along with this Twitter thread. You state that Rocket Pool's revenge arc is beginning today, and this is the most excited I've ever been for the protocol. Well, that's a lot. Those are strong words. 2 governance proposals are up for vote today that will be before and after moment for Rocket Pool. Okay, so you go on to talk about Saturn. Do you want to summarize this for us? I'll put it in your own words.
Yeah, so basically, I start off by saying that, Saturn 1 and 2 are now the official roadmap of Rocket Pool, and that Saturn is going to be introducing some really cool stuff, including having validators without requiring RPL. And to get the maximum benefit of Saturn 1 and Saturn 2, we need TVL and we need the protocol to grow as much as possible. So the community had this idea of removing the RPL constraints from now. So we can start building up the TVL. And the idea is that, there's this vote, RPP62, which is to introduce either ETH only validators, but also talking about how people who already are staking with RPL, how this is going to impact them. So there's 2 things, right? One is you can grow by opening up staking to more people, and that is by having ETH only validators, because we know that there's a lot of people out there who want to stake with Rocket Pool, but they just don't want to hold RPL. So this is attracting those people. The second vote is to allow people who are under 10% collateral to start getting more rewards. Because one of the things that we've seen quite a lot is that people will exit validators in order to get their collateral back above 10%. And that, of course, is bringing down the TVL of the protocol. So by removing the RPL restrictions on the rewards, you can start getting it at lower amounts, then those people are less likely to exit validators. So this is a true 2-prong attack on TVL increase. One is by stopping TVL that we already have from going away, which we've seen over the last year and a bit. That's happened really badly. Like we peaked and then it's been downhill since. And the second is to open up staking with Rocket Pool to a whole new audience and bringing back those people who were already staking Rocket Pool before but wound down their validators in order to get RPL rewards. They can now come back and they can start getting rewards again. So these are the 2 main things that are being voted on with RPL.
So let me Let's
Yeah.
stop there for a second. So why is it so important to get TVL up before Saturn 1, which comes later next year?
Excellent question. Yeah. So Saturn 1 introduces a new form of revenue share for the RPL token. So with this, we'll call it, universal adjustable revenue split, and there'll be certain amount of the rewards that are coming in from our ETH commission. Sorry, the income that's coming in from our ETH commission that will be distributed in different ways. And one of the ways in which that ETH rewards will be distributed is to RPL holders, people who stake with RPL or some kind of buy and burn. So for that to be meaningful and for there to be a good amount of money going into that, we need as much TVL as possible going into it. And because the more TVL we have, the more income we'll get. The more income we'll get, the more meaningful that distribution to RPL holders will be. And the problem is, right, like if we started Saturn 1 today, then the revenue share would actually be quite low and it wouldn't be that meaningful, right? Whereas the max TVL that we can have by starting Saturn 1 at that point, then people will be like, wow, there's actually a lot going on here. And it will build up a certain kind of attention to the protocol and, hype basically to the protocol, right? And those can be good or bad things, but I think that, we need to be in that position where Saturn 1 is as meaningful as possible on day one. And that's what I'm going to be really excited about later, like even more excited than I am now. But, we're really putting things in place right now that will help Rocket Pool grow as much as possible. And these are the two things. And then RPIP 63 that we're voting on is kind of like, has some minor bug fixes, but then it also has some parameter changes that will allow us to get RPIP 62 through the ETH-only validators and removing the RPL collateral requirement. Of course, on top of that, we have Constellation, which should be launching very soon as well.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. But this is all in this thread, right? It's that people received. It was very well received thread. It's actually my, I think, second most liked tweet ever, I think, or maybe something like one of those. So it was really nice that people responded really positively to this, and there were some good comments that came out of it, some good feedback that came out of it. People still have questions, so we have a lot to do in terms of educating people about what's happening. But this was then in conjunction with the Reddit post that had the same content really, and that was very well received as well. And like people really enjoyed reading that, and it was the most upvoted post of the day on ETH Finance. So
then that on the revenue share. That's going to come out of the ETH commission, which is 14%, right? And we're going to figure out exactly how much, but let's say 1% of that 14 goes back into some kind of revenue share, as an example.
9%.
Well, like 8, right. I don't think we haven't agreed totally yet on the parameter, right?
Yeah.
But like let's say 9%. So basically it's just math, right? The more TVL you have, the more ETH,
the bigger that 9% is.
The bigger that number, which means we can do. And there's 3 ways we can do that. There's the burn, where we just take RPL and we send it to a contract and burn it. And then there's the like LP, liquidity providing, buy and burn or something.
Buy and liquidity provide. So you use the ETH you basically put that into liquidity, and then it will over time buy the RPL. It has the same effect really, but also acts as a depth liquidity for exactly. So there's an added benefit.
The third is where the folks who have staked RPL will get just like extra ETH rewards as a voter share, I think was what we called it, right?
Yeah.
Because you have voting power, and therefore you get a share of some extra ETH revenue. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So as the way things stand right now, it seems like the voter share is the method that will end up winning out, but there's a long way to go in terms of discussion, and there's going to be a lot of discussion about this in the future, because the RPIPs actually, RPIP 49 that made Saturn 1 and 2 the official roadmap of Rocket Pool, there was a placeholder in there for the revenue split saying, this is to be determined later. But at the moment, the way things stand in the community, it looks like it will just go to people who stake ETH and RPL together. Then they'll stop getting RPL inflation, but they'll just start getting ETH rewards instead. So it's going to be a really exciting time.
Yeah. And here's the votes. First, we've got the Houston hotfix, our PIP 63. Let's do a refresh here to see on the, we've got quorum. We're over 14,000. And it looks like it's going to probably pass easily. We got 81% in for, 10% against, about 9% abstain. And as you said, there's a little bit of controversy here, not necessarily against what's in it, but more of a kind of a process issue. Can you just touch on that real quick for listeners?
Yeah, yeah. So there's this idea kind of going around in the community that basically this was a bundled RPIP, meaning that there was some bug fixes in here, but there was also some things that were outside of that. Parameter changes that would enable RPIP 62, and they shouldn't have been bundled. Basically, they should have been made separate RPIPs. That's one of the ideas. The second idea is that the team actually started working on the hot fixes and all the other changes before going through the process, and that basically is bad form in a sense. And I think that I'm a little bit more generous towards the team than maybe some other people are. I think that the RPIP 4, I think it was, that kind of spells out how things should happen. I think that if that should be followed, right? Like, that's technically the rules of governance for the community. And I don't think we should be breaking that. But I think I'm a little bit more generous towards the team in the sense that, this is new, I guess, in a way, even though we've been doing it for nearly a year now. Still mistakes are still being made, but I think it was in good faith. So I think I've got a little bit more generosity towards that. But it is the kind of thing that we really do want fixed, and Langer's kind of acknowledged that and said that the team going forward won't work on anything unless it's been ratified by an RPIP. So that's going to slow things down considerably, by a month pretty much, potentially. But the fact is that everything will then be working through the proper governance channels. And there are ways to speed that up a little bit by having, that whole process be a little bit quicker, maybe down to 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks. But that still means that, if the team wants to do something, they have to make a forum post. They have to give a few days for discussion on that. They have to make a sentiment poll. The minimum time for that is a week. Then they have to go through the snapshot vote. Minimum time for that is a week. So all of these things together will slow down their work, right? Because if they say, hey, we want to work on such and such upgrade or such and such feature, then it still has to go through the RPIP process in order to do that. Whereas now what had happened with this RPIP 63 is that the team had already started working on it. They already started doing the audits and stuff before the RPIP was written to do that, to get the approval. So there was some of those issues. Even in my vote, I said that, I wasn't fully happy with the governance process, but I think that, we should put this through. And I think a couple of other people have had that same sentiment, but hopefully going forwards, even if it does slow things down a little bit, any of this controversy will be removed completely.
Let's move on to RPIP 62. This is the big one that we were just talking about, where it creates ETH-only mini pools, as well as it asks the question, should we get rid of the 10% cliff for paying out RPL rewards? Right now, let's refresh this one as well. And we're at 16,000, so we're over quorum. Right now, again, it's about the same, 82% in favor of remove the rewards cliff and have ETH-only validators.
Yeah.
And so this looks like it's gonna, I know we got a couple outstanding big delegates who haven't voted yet, Patches and I think Val, but it seems like this is gonna go through. And we got about, how much time we got left on this? Maybe
10 days.
10 days?
More than that. Yeah, more than that.
Yeah, start date was September 30th. End date's October 14th. Okay, so, but this is big because if these, I want to mention one thing. As my understanding is, this, in terms of the cliff, it would, if this goes through, we remove the 10% cliff. So if you're only at say 3% RPL collateral, you'll start getting RPL rewards. But just in the short term, because when Saturn 1 comes, the RPL rewards stop because we're going to start doing that revenue share. So it's kind of a stopgap, right? And I think the idea is, let's not lose any more TVL. If you got a node operator who's like, I'm going to sell off a validator or two so I can get over that 10%, that lowers TVL. Or maybe you're just a node operator and you're like, I'm sick of RPL. It's going down. I'm going to go to CSM or I'm going to do something else. We want to make sure, what can we do in the short run? Because it could be another 6 months or more before Saturn starts doing the revenue sharing, that we can retain and maybe even grow TVL. Is that right?
Yeah. Absolutely, exactly, yeah. So I think that these are big steps being taken by the community, and it is changing Rocket Pool, the protocol, quite a lot, because one of the fundamental things for the protocol was that RPL has this relationship with the staking that's intertwined, and for a while there we thought that was a really good model, but then we very quickly realized just how constraining that model is, and just how many people there are out there who want to stake with Rocket Pool but don't want RPL or anything to do with RPL. And now we're making those changes to really help, like, unleash Rocket Pool and undo those limitations, those remove those shackles, and hopefully we'll grow. There's no guarantee that we're going to grow. It's a competitive market now. It's a very different environment compared to where we were 2 years ago. But the reality is that we're giving ourselves the best possible chance. And next thing is we go gung ho, all steam ahead on minting our ETH, because that's going to be the big bottleneck. If not with Saturn 0, then definitely with Saturn 1, and certainly with Saturn 2. So
Yeah.
that's where we stand right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk in terms of timeframes. So this is the exciting part. If and when our PIP 62 and 63 are ratified, and that would be October 14th, when can we expect to see ETH-only mini pools?
October.
Wow, 10 days after, that soon. So we were talking about the tree. I think Patches is in charge of the as a vertical tree or distribution tree. I'm not sure. I forgot the name of it. But that looks like it's going to be ready to go, and everything will be for October 20th.
So, okay, no, not quite.
No?
So
Okay.
October 23rd, I think, is the rewards period, or the morning of October 24th is the rewards period. So the idea is that as that reward period ends, I think Patch is already working on it, right? So he's setting up test suites for version 8 and 9, and then he'll be using that to make version 10. So he's doing the work, and he thinks that there's 80% chance that he'll have it ready on time. Now, we are giving ourselves the best chance by doing it on October 20th, because that is the day the new rewards period will start. So we then have 28 days to get the new tree written and tested and implemented. So that period that starts on November 22nd or whatever it is, that thereabouts, then that rewards tree will be ready by that point. However, in this RPIP, you'll see that there is like shall or as a may, basically saying that there is a chance that we'll have that November rewards period will not be, it won't be fully set up for the rewards tree. So in that case, the rewards for those ETH only validators will be 5% commission instead of 10% commission if they're coming with ETH only. However, we are almost certain, like 99% certain, that by the December rewards period starting, we'll have it all ready and done by then. Patches is quite confident that he'll be done. I think he said 80% confidence that we'll be ready for the November rewards snapshot, but there's a chance that he won't be. So we're trying to make sure that the community kind of understands this, that hey, if this happens, then there might be one rewards period where your rewards aren't quite as high as we want them to be, but they'll be there very soon. And it's almost like we're just kind of giving ourselves a little bit of cover and a little bit of protection, whereas we should be fine. And this was actually like an issue that came up on Sunday night, Monday morning, with Langers being like, oh wait, like what's going to happen here, kind of thing. And some people kind of upset that why is he bringing this up on the day of the vote going live, when we had a month basically to go through governance and trying to figure out these issues out. But I think what happened is the community had kind of already talked about it, but Langers either missed that or didn't interact with the idea until like the last possible minute. And then people were just like, hey, we talked about this already and this is kind of where we stand. And then he was like, oh, that might be bad user experience. Like maybe we should not change it until the rewards tree is done. But then people were like, hey, that's going to cost us a month, maybe that 4-week period. It might hurt the protocol basically, because Lido CSM is scheduled to go live potentially November 1st, and if we can get in before then, any day before then is good. So there's issues there, but there's a little bit of like controversies and dramas along the way. But the way that things stand right now is the vote goes through on October 14th. On October 24th, we will get ETH only validators. On November 22nd or whatever that date will be, 21st, 23rd, whatever it'll be, we will have people getting their 10% rewards, and those with RPL, they'll get more. One thing that I should clarify, because it seems like some people don't know this, is if you have an existing validator, that is set at 14% at the contract level. So you won't be losing any ETH rewards if you are under 10% collateral on your RPL. The only thing that will happen for you is you will start getting RPL rewards. You won't lose any ETH rewards. However, if you're a new validator, if you set up a new validator, those are the ones that will then, get the lesser rewards, and you'll get more from the RPL. So that's something to clarify. If you're an existing node operator, nothing will change for you except you will start getting RPL rewards.
Right. Yeah. And another thing, number I want to make sure people realize is that with the ETH only, if you have an 8 ETH only validator, that'll be 1.3%. I'm sorry, 1.3 times better rewards than if you were a solo. So 30% more in ETH rewards you're going to get from that, which is nice, right? And so there's one other thing I wanted to, I'll remember it maybe a little bit, but that's exciting, October 24th.
Yeah, I have another thing that to mention as well is if you have 16 ETH validators right now, even if you're under the 10% commission, 10% collateral, it'll still be profitable for you to switch those to LEB 8s and get the higher commission, even though you might be losing like a little bit in terms of your commission, because you'll be going down from 14% maybe to 10%. Because you're going down to 8 ETH validators, you'll actually still be better off. LEB, if you're a 16 ETH validator, there's almost no reason now for them to stay on the protocol. They can go down to 8 ETHs, which hopefully should be a good TVL boost as well. So there's a lot of really cool stuff here. And another thing to remember is that this isn't a smart contract change. Yes. This is just a parameter change.
Got it. That was what I was just going to say.
Yeah, so there's not too much worry here about Lindy or anything like that to make sure the contracts are good. The contracts are the same contracts we already have out there. They've been out there since Atlas. So we've got over a year now of Lindy on these. This is just a parameter change, which is what our PIP 63 is doing. It's enabling those parameter changes to happen. So we're going to be all set.
Yeah. So I can't wait. It's going to be really cool to see.
That's why I'm excited.
Let's move on to some NodeSet news here. And I stand corrected. I've been saying Wander's name as Wanderer. And so I apologize. It's Wander. Wander was posted a comment here in the Rocket Pool forum regarding RPIP 62. And he says, here's how this affects Constellation. We expect, but have not yet tested, that zero RPL mini pools will work with Constellation's design, which is great. Number two is we will not design Constellation for these economics, and there may be some disconnect between user expectations if this proposal passes. For example, RPL holders may reasonably claim that they have the right to ETH flows based on the RPL they are providing, but Constellation does not support this. And number three, Constellation's temporary node operator bond will need to be increased from 1 ETH to 3.4 ETH because this proposal changes the scrub penalty from RPL to ETH. This will likely decrease the number of operators who can participate in Constellation. He goes on to say, just as his opinion here, although I appreciate the benefits of this proposal, I personally see this as a net negative for RP because it represents a step backwards for the security model. I wish these kinds of experiments were done in a different protocol rather than changing Rocket Pool. And perhaps this decision will reverse that trend. Perhaps this will be temporary. Perhaps TVL growth is explosive and this descent looks foolish. Perhaps this doesn't change anything. And he goes on to say, it really sucks for builders to invest so much work, in our case years, only to have the economic model change drastically. I share Ramana's opinion that RP needs to do a better job of working with rather than against builders. There's a couple things in here, Whack. One is going from 1 ETH to 3.4 for a node operator. And I think he also comments on that we've had this philosophical debate of should Rocket Pool rely on builders to build on top of Rocket Pool, kind of like how layer 2s have done that to Ethereum, and let the execution be done by other people, and they can, because they're more nimble and they can be faster, or should it be done at the core protocol level? Anyway, so a lot of stuff in here. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so the one 1 ETH versus 3.4 ETH thing, I think they're right that that will close off some node operators from using Constellation. You have to remember that this 3.4 ETH or 1 ETH doesn't go away. It's just as a way of like protecting the scrub. So what happens is you give them the 1 ETH, they will go through the scrub period, which is 12 to 24 hours, and at the end of that scrub period, you will get that 1 ETH back. And then the next day you can do it again and again to get all your validators up and running. However, instead of doing it with 1 ETH now, you have to do it with 3.4 ETH, is what they think, to protect themselves against any potential penalties that 1 ETH won't be enough. With XR ETH,
so just to clarify, you don't have to stake 3.4 ETH. You're just putting it up as a bond for that 24-hour period, and then you get it back. So, but you have to have it to begin with.
Exactly. Okay. And some people might not have it, basically, is the point that Wonder is making.
Yeah.
With the XRPL, that's actually a really interesting point because, the XRPL will enable more rewards for, ETH rewards for the ETH people. So, like, for example, if you put up a ETH and you get XR ETH, that's enough for one validator, right? However, to get 14% commission, you also then need that 10% RPL. So that RPL is kind of unlocking that extra 4% of commission. Mm-hmm. What Wonder is saying here is, if you talk about it like, as fairness, those RPL holders should get some of that reward because they're the ones who are unlocking it, but they don't have the mechanisms for that in place. So the XRPL people will only get the RPL inflation that, RPL holders get with legacy validators. That, of course, will change with Saturn. They'll have to change that with Saturn, right? Because in Saturn, the RPL inflation is going away. So they won't get any RPL inflation at all. So they'll have to, the RPL, will have to unlock some of the ETH rewards. But then that is one of the other things that Wander is kind of saying that, builders need time to build, builders need time to adapt. Like, they don't know if they're going to be ready for, the day Saturn 1 goes live. That's why, Saturn 1 has a built-in ramp period where a few months of rewards will keep coming, at which point they'll stop.
5 months, reward periods,
Yeah. But I don't know if that's like guaranteed yet or not. I'm not sure if that's still an active decision or not. But I think 5 rewards periods should be enough time for Constellation to get everything that they need to be done, because the spec, of course, will be out a long time before that. They've got a really good relationship with the Rocket Pool team who can kind of like tell them, hey, this is how we're doing this is how it's going to look. So they can already start building on it, on their side as well. So when it goes live on mainnet, then they can send their stuff to audit and testing as well. So hopefully, they'll be in a good position. But that's the problem with building on top of another protocol, especially when, things are in flux. The thing is, right, like, in an ideal world, I totally agree that, like, let these builders build, let them like take a lead potentially, like, Rocket Lend, it's dead now pretty much, right? Like it's stagnant. That could have made a difference. Constellation, the idea is that could have made a difference. The reality of the matter is, though, that I think the Rocket Pool community, there are a few things, right? Like, we're down bad. So the community's more receptive now to changing things than they were 2 years ago because of the fact that, the old model is dead, like the way it's dead. Yeah. So the second thing is there's an existential threat on the horizon, and that's from Lido CSM, but also from rival staking services like Puffer and EtherFi and all these others. Mm-hmm. They're offering lower bonds, they're offering, collateral without needing their native tokens, all of this kind of stuff. So with Rocket Pool still holding on to those old beliefs that worked for a while, we're putting ourselves at a huge disadvantage versus the other protocols. So I think the community was just like, hey, if we do this at the protocol level, we can do a better job than waiting for Rocket Lend. We can do a better job in some ways than NodeSet. And sadly, these guys are profit margins are getting squeezed out, right? Like, we said about Rocket Lend a few weeks ago, is that their 2 main positions they had for income, they both kind of get diminished significantly. With Constellation, they don't go away to the extent that they did for Rocket Lend, but they do get somewhat diminished, right? Because the idea for for Constellation was that, there's 3 pieces that you have to bring together to become a Rocket Pool node operator. And that is, you need to have the technical skills, you need to have RPL, and you need to have ETH, right? Those are the 3 things that go into the pie. And Constellation, the great thing they did was kind of separate those 3 out. However, with RPIP 62 now, the protocol itself is kind of taking steps towards separating some of that out. Whereas, we don't need RPL anymore, right? So that then goes from 3 things you need down to 2 things. And of course, with the way sets work, there's more people who have those 2 things than there are those people who have those 3 things. So that kind of diminishes some of their value proposition a little bit as well. Of course, a huge gain that Constellation has that Rocket Pool, the protocol, doesn't have, is that they will give you a liquid staking token in return that you can then go and use in DeFi and stuff. So potentially, that's a huge bonus. So it's not completely, dead in the way that Rocket Lend was dead, because that wasn't giving you a token, right? It was just saying, here, go stake kind of thing. And it didn't have that value proposition that Constellation does. So I think Constellation is going to be fine. I think Constellation is going to thrive. I'm a huge supporter of Constellation. I think they're going to do a wonderful job, but I can kind of understand some of their frustrations.
Yeah, and speaking of Constellation, Joe, he came into the Discord and he writes here, hey, today we are proud to release 1.0 beta 2 of the Hyperdrive. This adds some improvement and bug fixes the community has helped us find with beta 1. It is recommended upgrade for beta testers. So this is a good sign. Looks like we're coming to mainnet soon. Any ideas, or have you heard anything about exactly when, or do you have a prediction you want to give?
Yeah, so I haven't heard anything official, like the teams being very tight-lipped about giving a date, which is totally fine. I think they've, for forever they've said, we don't want to give a date, like, dates always are wrong and it just builds animosity. So we're not doing that. So there's no date. However, if you put together the fact that, their audit should be done now, their final audit should be done, they're already testing. It looks like there haven't been any bug findings so far as I know. So it looks like everything's going ahead. The small little bugs and stuff that were found now are being addressed by Joe with the Hyperdrive, the updates and stuff that are coming through. So it looks like they're doing well. And it looks like they will go live within the next 2 weeks. I think that's my idea. Like, I think so. I don't know for sure, but I'm kind of getting that vibe that they'll be ready to go in 2 weeks' time. So if you are still procrastinating on getting on testnet with Hyperdrive like I am, stop procrastinating, get on there right now. Yeah. And, because otherwise you won't be ready for their mainnet launch. So also there's a POAP for testers. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. So yeah, anything for the POAP.
So we could have ETH-only mini pools and Constellation going live the same week, potentially, which would be really exciting. That would be a fun weekly orbit.
Yes, exactly. That's going to be a really, really great time. But I think that, there's the fact that this stuff is happening is what's really cool.
Yeah. So let's go on to wins. I got a win. It's not crypto related, just as a kind of one of those life things about, my father, he always told me, it's not the quantity of friends, it's the quality, right? And he always said, you have friends and then you have friends in your life. And so I think it's good to get out there, touch grass once in a while, whack. And I've got a couple of really good friends that I lean on from time to time. And it's really nice to have. And also, you don't have to see a good friend every day or talk to them every day. I have a good friend. He lives in Washington, D.C. He works for one of those acronym agencies that do some spying on other countries. Well, not actually. He collects data. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
He's doing all the. Anyway, it's funny because when I say, so what kind of work are you doing today? He's like, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. But anyways, I see him like maybe once every couple of years, and we only chat maybe once every couple of months. But it's like, if I needed something, I know he'd be there. So my win for the week is just, spend some time away from the computer, make a good friendship. You don't have to have lots of them, but at least one good one, and you'll see the benefits. So how about you? What's your win for the week?
My win is this governance stuff that's come up for the vote this week. And like I said, this is the most excited I've been about Rocket Pool, like in as a whole. I feel like this is I want to say it's like a culmination, but it's also like the first step at the same time, like leveling up basically. Like I said, this is before and after of Rocket Pool, and that's got me really excited. That's got me the win, and it looks like RPIP 63 is going to go through very strongly, and that's awesome. And that's what I'm ready for. So like that's my win, is that we've worked on this as a community for 11 months now, since last November when Lido CSM we were made aware of it. And now we actually like finally responding to that in a way that's concrete. And it's amazing that we're actually responding to it before CSM goes live as well. So these are all like little wins, that are kind of adding up, and it's all kind of come forward this week. But we've still got Saturn 1 to come, we've still got Saturn 2 to come, and those are a ways away. Like Q2 for Saturn 1, hopefully Q4 to Saturn 2, but maybe Q1 potentially. But the good thing is that we are actually on that path now, and Saturn 0 is getting passed this week, well, next week hopefully, and then we've got all this great stuff coming. So I'm really excited for this next period for Rocket Pool. This is my win for this week, is that we actually finally taking those steps now. So
Yeah.
it's awesome.
I know.
Yeah.
It feels good after talking about it for so long to see the fruits of all that labor. Anyways, thanks for joining us, everyone, for this week's Weekly Orbit. Like and subscribe. Hopefully we'll have some awesome news next week to share with you. But until then, we'll see you. See you, Wack.
See you.
Bye.